Hi, I'm Randy Altman with Post Perspective. We're at Siggraph 2019. I'm here with Digital Domain's Phil Cramer and Foundry's Chris Wetherly. And Phil, Digital Domain has worked on the Avengers films, going just two?
Yeah, the last two we worked back to back on, so Infinity War and Endgame. So it's almost 3 years on those two films for me.
So can you talk about your role in what your specific role was and also what the studio provided?
Yes, so at DD I'm the head of animation, but on the film I was the animation director for DD, and we were tasked with creating Thanos, basically early on. That was 2.5, 3 years ago. To develop the character, we had 6 months just to get him ready for shop production. And he had to be the best character ever made, sort of. That was from the outset. Both us and Weta, we both got that task, but we didn't know if we would get the job or for what it's really for. So we were just doing that asset standalone. And yeah, then we got the job, and because our work during that time was very heavy on acting focused, so we, on Infinity War, did around 40 minutes of acting with Thanos, and on Endgame we did similar, a little less, but again we did focus on all the acting, not so much the fight at the end, but the beginning of the movie.
Okay, and your workflow, I mean, you worked on this for a long time, so the workflow must have developed as you were going.
Yeah.
I know that you used Nuke, which is a big part of what you guys did.
Yes.
Can you just talk a little bit about that, and then we could get into this
for sure.
AnimViz.
I mean, for us, a problem often is in the production pipeline, I think, that the look changes drastically when you go from animation into the more expensive departments downstream. Yeah. So you submit animation and it looks, the color is incorrect, the backgrounds are incorrect, and so it's harder for the clients to really evaluate all that. So they're making final decisions on their performance for their character on something that they can't really evaluate if it's any good. And so the problem then often is that we start all the simulation intensive departments, spend a lot of money, and then we show it to them and they don't like it anymore. And so then we go straight back to animation, and so we're often in this loop of no confidence because they look at something, they don't know how this is going to look later. Yeah. And so on Infinity War, we knew we had so many shots to do of one character, really close-up acting. And so we developed something together using Nuke and GPU-accelerated rendering so that we would render every shot in animation, pipe it via Nuke, and sort of automate in that process that from every department in the pipeline, we grab all their latest and we comp it together and present the client something that looks infinitely better. And that we called AnimViz. So, and the idea was just you have pre-viz, and then you have post-viz, and then you have AnimViz. This was just for us the idea that we just continuously improve the look of the shot for the client, and it doesn't have setbacks in animation. And anyway, this was a huge success for us because it's often, initially I would say, my final quota was around 30%, meaning what I submit to the client and they then agree and like it. And that went up to 80 to 90% because all of a sudden you don't look at just animation, you look at the entire spectrum of the shot, and you start just thinking about okay, what do we need to finish this shot now, rather than focus on something that you might not even see in the lighting later.
And this is actually a trend we've noticed when we've come to visit clients quite a lot, is that ability to start seeing the final image or a representation of that image sooner and be able to carry that data from the start of the pipeline to the end. And Nuke's, it's the end of the pipeline, it's where you traditionally finish up, but we're finding more users wanting to bring Nuke into these areas a little bit sooner and carry that data across. And being able to review, like you said, we're really having good, meaningful conversations about how we can review better, how we can use the tools to make it so that rather than artists focusing on, going down a tunnel, giving them the breadth to see what their work is influencing in the context of a broad range of shots. So going from a single comp and artists just focusing on one thing to having context so they can do multi-shot compositing a lot easier.
That must save time and money, right?
A lot, yes. I think so, because we make also internally better decisions. I feel I give better notes because I see something that's more representative. Because what often happens is we get carried away with stuff that in the end is not visible. Because behind us is probably out of focus a little bit, and far behind us is really out of focus. And so sometimes you have background characters and you present them sharp. And so the client they focus on every little detail in there, even though later you won't see it.
Right.
And it's hard to tell them early on, like, don't worry about this. No, they're going to be like, this doesn't look good. But it doesn't matter ultimately. Or like on Thanos, we often had half of his face is in the shadow. So you shouldn't spend so much time focusing on what you don't see.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's a bit of an education too with the client.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit of trust as well. They just have to put their trust in you that you're not going to focus.
Sorry, I mean, for us, seeing how companies are starting to use Nuke in new ways. I mean, Nuke's always been there for your end companies, but it's also a platform of which companies build from, and they'll build solutions that help with these scenarios. So making sure that we can support that, keep the tool open enough that you can really go off and do stuff that when we come meet you, we're always actually a little bit surprised by what clients are then doing with the tool. So it helps then inform what we do next. So it's quite cool.
Yeah, for us, because the animators, just to be clear, they don't use Nuke themselves. So it's all an automated process. So the animator themselves, they just press one button. It launches then a render. Once the render is finished, it launches Nuke. And we have a very simple interface that we wrote on top of Nuke so that the animators can visually quickly see how this is going to get comped. And it just is all automated in the sense that it grabs from every department the latest thing and then packages together and outputs the images. And this is because they have such an open interface that we can so easily do things like that.
And they don't have to get too into the weeds technically. It's all the interface is just clicking the button, and it's about the creativity essentially. So.
Yeah, because my team, half of them are from stop motion or from 2D animation. They don't know computers that well. They're very good at creating performances, right? And so we don't want that they get lost in the technology. So this comes really nice and helps a lot.
Yeah, and that's something, again, I always talk about the trends of the industry because that's what I get to focus on in a lot of ways. But Nuke's a very powerful tool, but you still need to make sure that the artist can get to the core of doing the art. You don't want them lost in just pressing buttons. So we really try to think about the design a lot more. I mean, Nuke's been around for a long time. The UI is still improving as we go along, but we're trying to really focus with future tools in how we make it still in depth for when you need to drill down, but still simple for when you need to just have the artist be like, I don't want to think about that, I want to look at the image, because that's the end of the day the most important part.
One other thing I should mention, what is really nice is because we generate this AnimVis template in the end, and then this travels from animation in every department downstream and turns into the final comp at the end. So it is sort of a more synergy or how it flows down the pipe, and we didn't have that before. There used to be this harsh break after animation where everything changed, and so now really everybody uses the same Nuke script from the very beginning of the shot. It's really interesting.
That is pretty cool. Guys, thank you so much. It's a crazy show. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk a bit. So Phil, Digital Domain, Chris from the Foundry.
Thank you so much.
Take care.